the contestation of the class to continued domination by capital were undertaken, not just false flag attacks, but attacks on unions, attacks on wages, cutbacks in wages. Thatcher and Reagan came in and imposed wage cuts, and of course they've shifted. Another strategy was to shift production out to lower wage countries where they wouldn't have to deal with high waged and uppity workers. So there was a decline in real incomes after 1970 that's continued to the present. Excuse me, I have to cough again. So there was a multifaceted response by capitalist ruling class in the U.S. and Western Europe to the upsurge of contestation in the 60s. And this coincided, however, also with a critical onset of a profit crisis in capitalism that started in the early 70s. And you'll remember the oil crisis and the recession in 73 to 75, and a whole series of economic crises through the 80s and the 90s. Maybe I'll try to touch on some of these. I'm very sorry about my voice. It's doing the same damn thing. Apparently, I, for some reason, can't talk a whole hour all by myself. Obviously, interviews are not a problem, but best I can here. Let's see, what am I doing time-wise? Okay, I want to see if I want to go into all this detail. I think I'll just summarize this in general terms, like I did with those earlier periods. From the mid-'70s to the late 90s, there were a whole series of crises, economic crises all over the world, financial crises, third world debt crisis. The U.S. became a debtor nation. There was a savings and loan meltdown, the Japanese stock market crash. Mexico defaulted twice on its debts. Excuse me, folks. How agonizing is this for you all out there? Yeah, some honey and whiskey. I need something. Is this just unbearable? Because I can stop if you want me to. There was the Asian crisis in 97, 98. And, of course, Russia defaulted on its debts in 98. Long-term capital management collapsed and was bailed out by the federal government, the Fed. And then the dot-com collapse. The NASDAQ tanked by 60% and has never recovered. So the whole period from the mid-'70s to about 2000 was a continual crisis. There was a big stock market crash in 1987, and real wages were falling throughout this period. And at the same time, in response to the economic crises in third world nations, the IMF and the World Bank was imposing austerity on the global south and on developing nations. And as a response to all of this, all of these conditions, worsening economic conditions, very, very intense class war being waged by the ruling class on workers all over the world, the imposition of austerity, there was a resurgence in the late 90s in what's come to be known as the anti-globalization movement. And the occasion for the real breakthrough was in 1999 in Seattle, where the World Trade Organization tried to hold an important round of talks to set up its agency's operations. The World Trade Organization is the key agency for capitalist globalization because it's going to harmonize the conditions for investment worldwide, but at tremendous price to the working class. And in 1999, over 300,000 people from all over the world took to the streets in Seattle, and they shut it down. And they stopped the World Trade Organization in its tracks. And the World Trade Organization has never recovered. It's never been able to get its momentum going again. It's essentially been stymied ever since. And the ruling class was unprepared for this. There was no preparation by the ruling class in the United States for any kind of eventuality like this. They really didn't have the repressive forces in place. The people very effectively stopped the business at the WTO from going forward. So imagine how upset the ruling class was at this eventuality. From that date forward, every single major demonstration at meetings of, the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank, have been met with escalating repressive force, and this got more and more extreme in the run-up to Genoa, where people were actually shot in the street. Hold on, folks. And clearly, the ruling class decided that they needed to crack down physically and prevent this. And of course, these attacks, for example, in Genoa, this is classic fascist attack. Then 9/11 happened, 2 months after Genoa. From that point forward, big demonstrations like the ones that had happened earlier stopped completely. At all subsequent gatherings, there have been incredible security. I'm going to have to get some more water. Be back in a second. I'll try again here. So I'm just going to cut to my point here. I think it's highly plausible that the timing, at least, of the 9/11 attacks was affected by the growing anti-globalization movement. And of course, the people who were killed were working people, just like all the people who were killed in the bombings in Europe under Operation Gladio. So this global war on terrorism, there's some things that we need to realize about it. Terrorism has just replaced communism as the name for an enemy which is everywhere and must be defeated at any price. And this strategy is just designed to reduce the public to putty in the state's hands. The war on terrorism is a method of controlling domestic populations by fear, just like Operation Gladio was. The demonstrators, leftists, workers, are now either explicitly or implicitly considered to be terrorists. And all states, not just the United States, all states are colluding in this. This is not just the U.S. It's happening in Europe. It's happening all over the world. So this given now the nature of our society, it's a class society where it's class struggle, class war, with a long history of crises and resistance, and with a long history of state terror as proven by Operation Gladio and WTC in 93, OKC, Oklahoma City bombing in 95, I think it's very plausible that control of domestic populations by police states is the main purpose of 9/11, or co-equal with the notion of controlling Eurasia. And I think the long-term goal of the U.S. is what I call the Global Fascist Terror State, in alliance with the UK. The UK has attached itself to what it perceives will be the winner in this contest. So we've got a U.S.-UK alliance. Their purpose is to set up a global system of fascist control with themselves on top. They'll control Eurasia. That means they'll control China, Russia, the whole world. And then they can set up, basically the first ever global empire. So what's happening right now? We're not, they haven't conquered China and Russia yet, but in all countries all over the world right now, police state measures are, being instituted. They're all moving toward fascism. They're all effectively there already. It's just that there's a cover, a gloss on it that looks like, they're still democracies, but the real decision making is not democratic. There's some resistance on the part of European countries to U.S. domination, but it's not clear how long they'll be able to hold out. But the ruling class in all the countries is in agreement on this domestic population control aspect. So, I'm not sure that the U.S. and the U.K. are going to succeed in pulling off their global conquest. They may just upset the balance and find that they've brought themselves down, actually, ultimately. But in the meantime, we've got fascism developing in all the individual countries. So we're being subjected to false flag attacks and then fake terror scares. You don't really need to bomb people. You can just do these fake terror scares like we've had so many of recently. They can be openly, the product of government manipulation, and yet there'll be no press commentary about it because the press is in lockstep with the state on this. The false flag attacks have not just been 9/11. There was, of course, 7/7. There was the Madrid bombing, etc. We're going to have total surveillance. We're going to have checkpoints, body scans, drones overhead, no legal rights. We've got concentration camps that have been built by FEMA all over the United States. We've got a worldwide network of black sites, secret prisons. Countries in Europe are rendering captives to these secret prisons on the command of the United States. People are psychological operations. You guys know microchips, no health care, the whole thing. This is a fascistic picture, and it's happening in every country. And, it'll become global when the global conquest is completed. And if the U.S. and the U.K. succeed, then states will just become population control units like domestic police agencies. And people will be controlled with propaganda and entertainment and virtual reality and soporifics of various kinds. And, of course, the threat of hunger and torture. So they'll keep working for their low wages. And, this vision that our masters or, our wannabe masters have, this harmonized fascistic state under unipolar control, this is really the dream that the Nazis had. The Germans lost World War II, but the Nazis did not lose. Of course, the Nazis had a long a long earlier relationship with powerful elite families in the United States. The Bushes were involved with the Nazis going back into the 20s,